So you have either written or directed shows, the first Monster of the Week show in Squeeze, the scariest standalones such as Ice, intro to characters like the Lone Gunman and Skinner. What is it like being one of the most influential and beloved behind the scenes?
I don't know. I think what we were allowed to do in X Files was the thing that was so great about it was to be able to do things that we were just passionate about. So there was no dictate um, from the studio or from Chris or anyone that would really limit what we want, what we were trying to do. So we're basically just having fun, and I think that's when you get the best work from people is to allow them to have the freedom and the opportunity to express themselves in a way that hadn't been done before. And we knew going to when we first met with Chris after the pilot, and we said, "Well, what is this show? I mean, is it aliens every week? Is it?" At first, I think Chris at first said, "Yeah, I think it is." He said, and then he came back and said, "No, I think it could be anything that is an X file. What is an X file?" And in the pilot and in the second episode, it dealt with this whole conspiracy about aliens. But then we thought, wouldn't it be great if you had, I mean, X Files could be anything that's unexplained. And what if we do, we're in an office at Fox, and I remember Glenn Morgan is my partner, or was my partner, in X Files, he was at least. And there was this old ventilation duct that it was just an old building with this really old vent. And we thought, what if a guy could come through this, tiny little vent? And so that's how we came up with, Squeeze. And so it was just the ability to play that was the most important aspect of the work that we had done in X Files.
Home is still one of the most controversial television episodes to air. Can you tell us a little backstory about Home and how that came to be, and why you think it still resonates with X Files fans?
Well, Home came from several different places. One was it was a documentary at the time going on called My Brother's Keepers. I don't know if you heard that.
Yeah.
It's a very effective and really interesting study of these brothers and that lived together. And you had a sense that they were doing more than just living together in a documentary. And then there's a book called The Nature of Evil that we were interested in, and it's talking about basically how you know nature isn't this kind of a fuzzy feel good place where animals are basically animals are cruel, and they are instinctively will cast off the most genetically disabled or so there were that was a theme they ran through. And then third thing came from this is biography by on Charlie Chaplin. He talked about this. He was in England. He was doing live performances or vaudeville type performances, and this family loved him, invited him back to their home to have a meal. And he came. He went back, and then after the meal, he said, "We have a very special surprise for you." And they basically went to under the bed and wheeled out this kid, had no arms and legs, and he stood him up and he started dancing around like this. And that's how the whole mom under the bed idea came. So all those influences, plus we were at that time we had just our series, Glenn and mine series, Space Above Beyond, was just canceled. So we came back to X Files for the fourth season, and they said, well, we want you to do four shows, and then what else do you want to do? And I said, well, I'd like to direct one and all that. But then we thought um, Home was the least the least controversial of all the ideas we had, because we thought, well, this is it's sort of like straight down the wheelhouse kind of horror thing, and we had done the research on the Brothers Keeper and all that stuff. So all these kind of ideas came together, and Glenn and I didn't really understand the kind of impact it would have until, like, I think Charlie Goldstein, who's the head of production at Fox at the time, called us after we turned in the script. He says, "You guys are perverts. You guys are sick." So that was the first inkling we had that there was something, amiss. But it turned, it was Kim Manners directed the episode, and it was just really well done. I mean, Kim did an amazing job, and the makeup effect. I mean, the ideas were just, I think, were just enough with incest and all that kind of, it was just enough to creep people out, I think. And apparently, this is a story we did a show called Millennium after this. Mm-hmm. And for Sweeps, we thought, oh my God, let's have the Peacocks come into Millennium as a crossover show. And then we pitched that to Peter Roth, who was the head of Fox at the time. And he says, no Peacocks. The reason why we have the V chip in television is because of the Peacocks. So apparently, we had some crazy, because of that show, they had the whole, warnings about the violence and all this stuff on TV. This is what I've been told, at least. Anyways, we couldn't do a crossover for Peacocks on Millennium because it was so controversial.
Such a great episode, though.
Yeah.
It's so well done and so well filmed, and just, I mean, obviously well written, but it's so funny that everybody had such a weird reaction to that.
Yeah.
Now, one of your movies, Final Destination, which is my mother's favorite movie of all time, she talks about it all the time. It was supposed to be an X-Files episode. What? How did that come about, and how did that change the movie?
I don't know that this was. I guess it was a pitch that Jeffrey Reddick had, but I had no knowledge of that.
Oh, okay.
This was told to me after. Well, when we were brought into Final Destination, all we saw was a treatment, and apparently there was a script written. We never saw that. We saw a treatment, and the setup was the same, which is kids go on a trip. Somebody has a premonition, they get off, and death comes after them. But I think the central thing that Glenn and I did, that was, I think, the essential reason why Final Destination was successful, is that in the treatment, death was personified in sort of like a scream villain or something, someone who came and killed you. And we thought, Glenn and I went into a meeting. We said, well, we don't want to do that because it's been done. But what if death is all around us, and is like this whole Rube Goldberg thing, that death basically manifests itself in the everyday, and you don't know how it's going to get you, but it's going to get you, and all you can do is try to avoid it for a time being. And so that, I believe that is the reason why, Final Destination was such a success, because, our intention in making a movie was somehow to get the audience, and in every scary thing that we've done, was somehow get the audience in a position where they can experience the same scare or experience the same situation where they think to themselves, oh my God, this is what's going to happen next, or this could happen to me. And that to me was, you're not really, yes, you could be scared of the boogeyman or Michael Myers coming after you, but if it was anything in the room that you're in, or if you visit a dentist, or if you go on an airplane, that's what we wanted to achieve, to make that, to give the audience that Final Destination moment, which is a lot of people have posted on after seeing the movie. He goes, oh my God, I almost had this happen to me. So I think that was the beauty of that concept, and why it was successful and why it was so fun to do.
Yeah, that movie still stays with me. I'm well into my 30s, and I refuse to, drive behind a log truck, or every time we get on a plane, I'm like, Final Destination. So thank you for that.
I have this funny story about that. We wrote the script for Final Destination was called Flight 180 when it first came out, and so we wrote the script, gave it to the studio. And Richard Brenner, who was the executive at the time, he's now the president of New Line. He took it. He was going to New York and he took it on board the plane. His plane was Flight 180. His number of his plane was Flight 180 from LA to New York, and he had the script with him. It says Flight 180. He was reading it. He's go, "Oh my God!"
Oh my God.
It was interesting genesis.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would have been freaking out if I were.
That's wild, yeah.
Love that.
So for X-Files, do you have a favorite episode that you wrote or directed?
Or both.
Or both.
I only directed one in the beginning of it, and that was the most interesting in the first part before the reboots. That was the most interesting episode that I believe we could have done, because it was not on. We wanted to do a show without Mulder and Scully, except
musings, right? Musings.
Yeah, musings of Saber Smoking Man. So we did a show about the Saber Smoking Man, which I thought was interesting because you don't do a show about a secondary character usually, and we had a lot of fun saying that he was involved with everything from the JFK assassination to the Martin Luther King assassination and so on. So it was a lot of fun. The one that I wrote and directed that I had the most fun with is probably Ghoulie, the one that we just recently did, because I love the idea of Mulder and Scully's son and what his deal was and how he could affect them and become an X-File at the same time. And I love the ending of that, where they just miss, Scully basically just misses seeing her son. So I like that.
That was a great episode.
Yeah.
I love the reboot. What was it like coming back for the revival? Was it like high school reunion? I mean, you're talking 20 years later. What was it like redoing the reboot?
It was kind of like that. I mean, we had all done many different things since, and I had this kind of romantic notion of like, the band getting back together kind of thing. And it was something like that. But at the same time, I think we all had a lot of years under our belts, and I had this kind of idea that everyone was doing it for the same reason, which was just the love of the show. And that's not necessarily true. People do things not for that reason. So that, as part of that is reality, and part of it is a little disappointing, because I had this kind of crazy idea that we're all doing this for fun and love of the show, and it wasn't all that way. But I have to say that it was an opportunity to go back to a place that, I think X-Files is my favorite show to work on ever. Because I was young then too, and everything was kind of new, and we were such a hit, and not a hit in the beginning, which was great because we had this kind of very slow build, and people start really loving us, and so all that, experiencing that and going back to something like that is kind of like a first love, I guess. So it was wonderful for me, but there is that cynical side of like, people are doing this because they want to do it for money, and so that it didn't taint it, but it just made me realize that I live in this dream world, and people don't.
We will pretend. We'll pretend it was like.
We'll pretend.
We'll pretend.
What do you think it is about the X-Files that keeps fans interested, and the show is still so relevant 27 years after the pilot? What do you think it is about the X-Files that keeps its original fans coming back and also bringing new fans to it?
Well, I don't know. If I knew, I would be creating another X-Files over and over. There's just sometimes, I think the ideas of there's something conspiratorial out there is obviously still happening, as we can witness with QAnon and all that stuff. And I think we really touched on people's fears of government and that things are happening that we're not told about. So that's one element of it. I think the other two, the most important ones, I think, really is David and Jillian. They were the perfect couple to bring you in to this world, and they had kind of a chemistry and a magic that you can't replicate with just anybody. People want to spend time with them. Um, I mean, it's very difficult to quantify what makes a show a success. It just happens. Um, the right things in the right time happened, and I don't quite, you don't quite know. I mean, I still don't quite know. I mean, I think we did good shows and they were fun, but it's all those things together that made it the special show that it was, and that it is, I guess.
Do you have a favorite memory from the show?
Well, the most surprising memory I have is when we were nominated for a Golden Globe, and we were seated like way in the back of the auditorium at the Beverly Hilton, and we had no expectations of anything. So we just started drinking because the Golden Globes is one award show that they had dinner and drinks at open bar. I remember just like all of us just had no expectations. It was me, Glenn, Alex, Howard, Chris, and just getting kind of drunk, and then they called our names for the show. So it was like that was one of the kind of like what early, fun, exciting surprise.
So, if you could say something to the fans of the X-Files over the last 25 years, what would you share with them, or what would you say to the fans?
Wow. I guess what I would say is, thank you very much for watching the show and making it a success. The real reason why we do any of this stuff really is for people to watch. It's not, it means not, a script is nothing. A script just sits there on the table, and until somebody makes it and somebody watches it and reacts to it, it doesn't do anything for you. But, it's the fans who really make you feel like you've accomplished something. And so I just want to thank people for enjoying and watching the show and, loving the work.
Awesome.
That's great. Thank you so very much for your time today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.